An integer is a number that can be either positive or negative, and we have them in real life in many situations. Here's a couple of examples. First of all, temperature. Everybody's used to the idea that temperature can be above zero or below zero. To show a temperature below zero, we put a negative sign in front of it. To show a temperature above zero, it's positive, but we don't bother with the positive sign. With money, the same thing happens. If you owe money, then your net worth is down by $4, so it's a negative 4. If you are owed money, or money is due to you, it's a positive amount. $4 is the same as plus $4. We leave the plus sign off. It's possible to have negative and positive fractional numbers. For example, if I owed $4.20, I can write it like this. However, an integer is always a positive or negative whole number. So while integers can be positive and negative, and you can have fractions that are positive and negative, integers have to be whole numbers. So integers can be -4 or +4, but an integer can't be 4.2. We use number lines to show integers and to show positive and negative values. On this number line, you can see that in the middle is 0, to the right is positive, and to the left is negative. On this slide, I'm going to show you how to add positive and negative numbers. Let's have a look at the first example. We've got +3 plus -4. To show that, what I need to do is first of all start at 0 and step +3. 1, 2, 3. And I've moved to +3. Now I need to add -4. If it's a negative number, you should be facing the negative direction rather than the positive direction. So let's just swap a little fellow over. He's now facing the negative direction and he has to move 4 in that direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the answer is -1. Okay, now let's look at the second example. Starting with our little fellow at 0, he has to move -4 in the negative direction and -5 in the negative direction. So -4, let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've moved 4 in the negative direction. Now we need to move another 5 in the negative direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the answer is -9. So the way to think of it is that whenever you're moving along the number line, you're facing the direction of the sign. If it's a positive number, you should be facing in this direction, positive direction, to the right. If it's a negative number, you should be facing in the negative direction to the left. And then just move that many places forward in the direction you're facing. In this slide, I'm going to be explaining what happens when you're subtracting a negative or positive number. So let's have a look. Again, I'm going to start at 0. So I need to move my little fellow down to 0. And I have him facing in the positive direction because I'm going to do +4. So let's move +4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that gets me to +4 over here. Now, in the next one, what we've got is we've got to subtract -4. So because it's a negative, I now need to face the negative direction. So I'll swap those over. And normally, if you're adding a negative, you then move in the negative direction. But because we're subtracting, you actually just walk backwards. So if I'm going to walk backwards 4 places, I'm going to move like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's an interesting thing. Those two negatives mean face the negative direction but walk backwards, give me the same answer as if I'd walked forwards in the positive direction. I'll come back to that later. So the answer for this one is actually +8. Now let's look at the next question. We've got -3 subtract -4. So I'll move this little fellow back to 0 again, and we're facing in the negative direction because it's a -3, and I need to move -3. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3. The next part says I need to do subtract -4. So I need to still point in the negative direction because it's a negative number. I'm looking in a negative direction, looking this way, but I've got to subtract, so I walk backwards. So let's walk backwards 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Doing that, I end up at +1. So the answer to that is +1. So when you're doing a negative, you face in the same direction as the sign. So it's a negative. If it's a positive sign, you face to the right. If it's a negative sign, you face to the left. But when you subtract, you walk backwards. In maths, we like to have shortcuts that save us time. So in the last few slides, I was showing you why positive and negatives work and how subtracting and adding works. But sometimes that can be a bit confusing. So what we do is we try to simplify it by getting rid of as many positives and negatives as we can. One of the things you might have noticed is that if you've got two positives together, that's equivalent to going in the positive direction. If you've got two negatives, that's the same as going in the positive direction as well. If you have a negative and a positive, or a positive and a negative, that's the same as going in the negative direction. So let's see how that works. So if I've got this example here, which is -3 minus -3, the first thing I do is I just rewrite it using the shortcut method and combining both of these two negatives into a positive because they're worth the same. So that's really just the same as -3 plus 3. And if I'm working that out, and I'm doing -3 plus 3, I start at 0, I go 3 steps to the left for the negative, 1, 2, 3, and then I have to go 3 steps to the right, 1, 2, 3, and this answer ends up being 0. Sort of makes sense, because if I lost $3 and got $3 back, I'd end up having no difference in what I started off with. Let's have a look at the next example. In this one here, I've got +4 and -+5. What I do is I rewrite it and I put +4 and I put just -5 because a negative and a positive make a negative. So let's look at how that works. Starting at 0 again, +4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 in the plus direction. Subtract 5, that's 5 in the negative direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I end up at -1. So the answer to that one is equal to -1. So while in the previous slides I showed you why it works the way it does, people tend to use this method here, the shortcut method, to work out positive and negatives. Two positives make a positive, two negatives make a positive, and when they're different, a positive and a negative, you get a negative. And if it's positive, you move in the positive direction, and if it's negative, you move in the negative direction. That way it's a bit simpler.